Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to make a video discussing the new WASP, Nadia Van Dyne, the one that we all thought was going to get the Hope Van Dyne uniform from the new MCU Marvel Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, but didn't, and the new other paywall character that, you know, part of the community is salty about. So I went ahead and tested her out primarily in Shadowland to get a better understanding of the character, and I wanted to give you all of that information and also the benchmarks that I was able to achieve with a fairly free-to-play build. Now, of course, my cards and things like that won't be, but in this case, for all of the kind of stages that I'm going to be referencing, for all of the damage numbers and kind of general idea consensus, it's going to be for the following build. So I have no obelisk. Of course, she has no uniform. The ISO set is a very basic 6-star Hawk's Eye. I don't think this is optimal, and I'll tell you what the optimal ISO set is a little bit later when I discuss the actual build. Pretty straightforward level 3 stats or skills, with only 5 and 2 being maxed out because they provide buffs. That's the reason why I don't max out all my skills, guys, because it's too expensive for gold. And then no Uru and only 1 gear at 17. I do have 100 bios right now that or 80 that I've collected day by day from the bio sub, but this is pretty much as close as I can come to emulating what a free-to-play player would have for Nadia in terms of just getting the character unlocked with 1 free day of a bio sub as a new player or something like that, and then using a mega rank up ticket or other 2 to 6-star rank up tickets to get her here, and not having the rest of the bio sub for her gears. Of course, I'm going to be gearing her up later on, getting her gears to 20, getting her to tier 2, but I think it's an interesting thing to look at for those of you who are maybe thinking about, okay, I want to get Luna Snow, I want to get Spider-Man 2099 for my first 2 bio subs, but then I don't know, do I want to get Enchantress, do I want to get Agent Venom, Ghost, maybe Nadia? So I like this comparison at this stage of her build, and what I found is that she's really good. Her damage is very good. She has good AoE. She has a couple of quirky weaknesses that you have to keep in mind, but I think overall she's built much more as a PvE character than a PvP character. So for those of you in competitive alliances, I don't think she's going to be taking over anything for ABX, but that's just my initial impressions. I could be wrong about that still. Obviously, a CTP of energy in tier 2 goes a long way. But lacking a uniform really hurts her chances there. The other big reason why I don't think she's good for PvP is because of her Winsome Wasp passive. And unfortunately, despite the fact that it has the same name as her mom's tier 2 passive, it doesn't do the same thing. But first, let's just rewind and go through all the skills one by one to discuss them. Her first skill, Sting Blaze, is no iframe. It's got some nice crowd control effects, but I would primarily skip this skill because the damage is low, and you actually don't need to use all of her skills. She's got low cooldown on 2 and 3, and she's got manageable cooldown on 4 and 5 to the point where you can use all 4 skills kind of in a nice rotation without having too much stress and too much kiting. And I'm doing this with only, actually, yeah, basically max skill cooldown, 49%. So her second skill is really where things start to take off. She does kind of a dive bomb line where she flies above the enemies. It's an iframe, and it's her main way of buffing herself. She gives herself dodge, all attack, all speed, and crit rate. So that's a great skill to start off, but it's not ideal, and we'll discuss that based on her other skills. Her third skill is the one that pairs with her passive. She basically does a backflip, also an iframe, and she lays down, I believe, 5 of these discs, and the discs will take the form of kind of purple upside down cones in the air, almost like she's trying to land a plane, and then it's going to debuff the enemy by reducing their size, so you can get mini versions of your enemies in Shadowland, which is always fun, and it debuffs their attack and their defense. This skill paired with the 4-star passive is what gives her the buff, because when she attacks an enemy that's been shrunken, she gets an all attack increase of 10%. With her tier 2, that 10% all attack increase it jumps to 180% damage proc, which is the same thing that you see on the CTP of Destruction, the CTP of Energy, and then other obelisks. But it's not tied to the skill, it's just when the skill is used. So you can actually transfer this over to other characters. You can trigger her miniaturize, you can shrink the enemy, switch, and use another character to take advantage of that buff. I don't know why you would do that, but it's possible, and it also means that it's possible Not at tier 2, because at tier 2 it requires Pim Disc, but at tier 1 she gets a buff if she's attacking with someone like Ant-Man, who didn't shrinks the enemy before she uses Pim Disc. Again, a very specific situation, and I wouldn't recommend trying to replicate it just for that 10% attack buff. It's just not worth it, but it is something that's definitely possible because Ant-Man does shrink the enemies as well. Then her fourth skill is where things start to get pretty interesting. Long iframe, and it's a bunch of slashes, and it's a pretty nice AoE. Almost looks like Wolverine is there. In this case, this skill does have kind of gaps in the iframe, so it looks like a full iframe, but it's not, and that's why this skill is kind of one of her biggest quirky weaknesses, and this is what's going to hurt her in PvP, because enemies will be able to iframe in between her iframe on a fourth skill, and she'll get interrupted. So if you're auto-playing Nadia on timeline or something like that, and you see her get consistently interrupted on her fourth skill, it's not a glitch. Unfortunately, it's just the way the skill was designed, and I think given a couple of other things, given the fact that it's very difficult to time the damage proc of her tier 2 passive with her third skill without it landing on her third skill, because you want it to land on the fifth skill because it does the most damage, it really seems like the devs did not want this character to be super dominant in every game mode, and they wanted the character to just dominate or at least be very good in manually played game modes. World Boss Ultimate, Shadowland, Extreme Alliance Battle, but not really, so on and so forth. And then her fifth skill is by far her best. It's a long AoE, or long iframe, large AoE. She's got a debuff, so she cleanses herself of all debuffs, and she can't get debuffed for 2 seconds after that, which is great. And it gives her a max HP recovery of 6%. It says 1 second, but it actually continues to trigger. It triggered at least 3 times for me, so that's 18% health. That's awesome. And then she gives herself a 2-guard hit that also refreshes for the duration of the skill. For the duration of the skill just basically means there's going to be kind of a circle at the bottom of her character, similar to her mom's new 5th skill, Janet WASP. And that will continue the effects, the debuff, the guard hit, and the heal. Now, given the fact that her 5th skill is so dominant, given the fact that it gives her a guard hit, and given the fact that her 4th skill has gaps in the iframe, to me that logically paired them very well together. So as far as a skill rotation goes for Nadia, I think the safest one would be to open with your 5th skill, but do not cancel it. If you cancel the 5th skill early at all, you will not get the final hit where she dive bombs back down, and that dive bomb back down is what's going to give you the debuff, the heal, and the guard hit. So do not cancel the 5th skill. Complete opposite of Ghost, where you want to cancel the 5th skill. So 5, ride that baby all the way through, then you go into 4, and now with your guard hit, with the 4th skill, even if you get interrupted, you won't take damage from those first couple of hits. You might still die if the enemy interrupts you with a long iframe like Quicksilver's 4th skill, but it makes it a little bit easier for you, and it definitely makes it perfect for Shadowland. After that, I would do the 2 skill, but I would cancel that pretty early on. You can cancel it as soon as you see those buffs pop up, and then I would hit the 3rd skill, and by the time you hit the 3rd skill, you're probably ready again for the 5th skill, and then that makes the timing perfect, especially at tier 2, because you want to cancel the 3rd skill into the 5th skill ideally to get that 180% damage proc activation. I am curious to see what her damage looks like at tier 2 and how quickly she's able to conquer some of these stages, and while I know Shadowland is not the perfect or not the kind of ultimate level to test characters at, she was able to solo high 20 or mid 20 stages of Shadowland. That's basically anything before stage 25, because that's when you must use tier 2 characters. So I was lucky enough to get, I think it was a stage 23 or 24 Rumble with the Hulks, and it's a blast Rumble. It has physical reflect, and even though her 4th skill and her 5th skill have physical damage, because they're both iframes, she doesn't take any damage from that, which is fantastic, and because of that, she's able to solo it very smoothly. It takes about 1 minute and 30 seconds. It's not like her damage is Luna Snow level of OP, but it's definitely on the higher end given all the blast types we have. Now, as well, given the number of blast types that we have, she is in a very crowded class. She's competing with a lot of other very good blast characters in general, but also blast females, Jean Grey, Scarlet Witch, Enchantress. There's a whole bunch of very good blast female characters. So based on those criteria, I would say that this may be a case of if you really like the character and that the character is good. Whereas Luna Snow is just basically good overall for anyone. She's got an interesting typing, being a speed type who deals energy damage. WASP doesn't bring a lot of new things to the table. I will say this, however, her build does have some generous tendencies, I guess. Because of the fact that she has a damage proc on her tier 2 passive, technically for those accounts who have trouble rolling damage procs, you could roll an invincibility obelisk for her and still maintain some of that damage. Now, it would be nice to have double damage procs, of course, but it's not obviously a necessity given the fact that she can sustain her damage well enough with that. And so that does provide a bit more flexibility for her build. However, given the fact that she can buff her all speed by 15%, which is a pretty large number, I would not recommend Power of Angry Hulk as her ISO 8 set, because the all speed is probably going to go over the cap of 30% unless you have no all speed on your cards. So that leaves Hawk's Eye and Overdrive. Now, normally I would just recommend Overdrive right away, but in this case I would check the gears to see for skill cooldown, which would make Hawk's Eye worse. And unfortunately, she does have skill cooldown on her 4th gear at the top, which means it's the main stat, which means it's probably quite easy to max out her cooldown without this set. So unfortunately, on the other hand, while the obelisk may be very flexible for WASP, it appears that at least I think, the best, the most ideal, the most min-maxed ISO 8 set for her would be Overdrive. And I know you guys hate hearing that word. I hate saying it, but that is, you know, kind of the hard facts. In my case, I rolled Hawk's Eye and I just kept it because I don't want to spend too much gold rolling Overdrive, and I can kind of tweak her gear around to make it work. I'm also probably not going to fully awaken this set, so I'm not going to get a higher bonus from Hawk's Eye, so I just need to watch out. She's probably going to be 1 or 2% over on cooldown once I max out that gear from 17 to 20, but I can live with a couple of points over. Maybe in your case, if you can't, you might want to consider Overdrive. So that is the build, and that is the kind of skill rotation and the thoughts on Nadia. For those of you that have tier 2 Nadia, let me know how she's performed for you. We've got basically the only ABX day for her was the 2nd day. So if no one used her there, I'm not sure where we'd get information from her for besides something like World Boss Ultimate. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know where you would put her on the list of best paywalls, above Ghost, below Ghost, etc. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. Hit the bell if you don't want to miss any of my videos. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.